Yes, hi everybody, this is Lori. Thanks for tuning in again. I'm bringing to you a man named Dr. Robert Wilner, who was a beautiful man who gave his life for the truth and basically stood up during the AIDS epidemic, quote unquote, and denied that there was any epidemic at all, that it was all a fraud, it was a lie. He names Fauci as one of the key people. Again, Fauci was the Mengele of his day and continues to practice his dark voodoo medicine today. So I urge you all to listen to this carefully. I've edited the highlights in the first 8 minutes, and then the full entire 1 hour talk continues after the highlights. So thanks for everybody for listening. 4 months after he gave this speech, he was dead of a quote-unquote heart attack, which of course we all know was murder. He was marginalized and his license was taken away. His medical license was taken away, and he stood up for truth and was murdered for it. So this is my tribute to yet another man who stood up for truth and was very brave and courageous. And his words came back to us 10 years later to show the pattern here. Thanks, everybody. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, folks, on behalf of Project AIDS International, I'd like to thank you for coming to this press conference. Dr. Wilner, MD, PhD, will be giving an explanation in just a moment on what we're doing here and what he will be doing with our volunteer, who is Kim Freyes, who is an HIV positive individual. Today, Dr. Wilner will be infecting himself. He will first explain what he will be doing, as well as why he will be doing.
Now, you've got to ask yourself the reason that I'm here today. And it's been suggested that I'm here to sell a book called Deadly Deception. There's only two ways that you can get the truth to people: by your own words out of your own mouth, and by putting them on paper. And that's the reason for the book. We're talking about probably the most horrible scandal and scam ever perpetrated, not only in the name of science, but in humanity and in all history. When it was first announced that Dr. Robert Gallo had found the virus that probably caused AIDS, and that announcement was made with Margaret Heckler in 1984 to the press and to the media, without one single scientific document appearing in any journal in the United States. And as we know now, without any proof whatsoever that the virus caused any disease. The media picked up on it for the sake of a story. And soon the virus that probably caused AIDS was now the virus that caused AIDS. It was proven in the press and nowhere else. Now, it's interesting, a lot of questions are asked of me whenever I appear before the cameras and do what some people have called a stunt, to sell books. I'm from the planet Earth. I honestly believe that these individuals are from the planet Uranus. How anyone could suggest that I would stick myself with a virus that is supposedly deadly for the purpose of selling a book, that's complete insanity. And I will put the lie to the individuals of the NIH, particularly Gallo and Fauci and Hazeltine and Essex, particularly Gallo and Fauci and Hazeltine and Essex, particularly Gallo and Fauci and Hazeltine and Essex, and the rest of these scoundrels of the worst order. Criminals guilty of genocide, criminals guilty of genocide, criminals guilty of genocide, without a doubt. I invite them to take me to court. I wish Burroughs Wellcome would take me to court, because they have been putting out a killer drug knowingly. Because they have been putting out a killer drug knowingly. because they have been putting out a killer drug knowingly. Because in a court of law, I would have the opportunity to provide the absolute proof and evidence, as I have in my book, Deadly Deception. And in order to sell a book, I would inoculate myself with a virus that supposedly is deadly. That we have known what causes acquired immune deficiency diseases for at least 70 years. It's in the medical textbooks. It's there for you to read. Number one cause on the face of this earth is malnutrition and starvation. That's African. Look to the headlines of the October 3rd issue of the London Times, Sunday Times last year. And the inside headlines that screamed across 2 pages, the plague that never was. Because the number one cause of AIDS today is actually 2 medical drugs. AZT, a drug that was discovered in the 60s as a chemotherapeutic drug for cancer and was shelved because it was too toxic to treat cancer. A drug worse than cancer is being used to treat people who are immunosuppressed. Now let's go back to the other causes of AIDS. So it's not only street drugs but medical drugs, but now 3 is radiation. Whether they worry about it, Chernobyl and Nagasaki and Hiroshima. But number 4 is chemotherapy. Number 4. The number 4 cause of death of acquired immune deficiency diseases. Chemotherapy. And the most toxic chemotherapeutic drug of all times, AZT, is what they're now using to treat AIDS. But did anybody here bother to look at the insert, the paper that comes with the drug? It's a DNA terminator. It's a DNA terminator. It's a DNA terminator.
This is the most likely thing by far to kill over 10 million excess people.
It means it is a terminator, just like the movie. It terminates life. You terminate DNA, you terminate life. And they talk about side effects in the insert. When are you going to learn there is no such thing as a side effect in medicine? It's an unwanted direct effect. And you know what one of the unwanted direct effects of AZT is? Lymphoma, cancer, one of the diseases of AIDS, as they call it. Oh, another so-called side effect, which is really an unwanted direct effect, pancytopenia. You need a definition? Pancytopenia. Pan, all, cyto, cells, penia, loss of all your cells. Pancytopenia. You need a definition? Pancytopenia. Pan, all, cyto, cells, penia, loss of all your cells. That's AIDS. That is the definition of AIDS. So AZT, by definition, by their own drug insert, causes AIDS, and nobody survives AZT. I think the last election tells us what the people think about government. But science is acting no differently than politicians do. And now we have disease by politics. Isn't it strange that the same day or the day after Robert Gallo filed for a test for HIV after it was announced? This sounds like premeditation. You mean he just happened to have this test available? And so the same day or the following day, he files for a patent? And of course, Fauci said that you need, when he was answering what I did in Cleveland a week ago, he said, well, he's going to have to stick himself 300 times to transmit the virus. Where are you people in the press? 300 times to transmit a virus? 300 times to transmit a virus? You cannot have an epidemic under those circumstances. 300 times to transmit a virus? You cannot have an epidemic under those circumstances. Now, what about the rest of them out there? You know, I often ask myself the question, if my children were still in school, and I had house payments to make, and I had to put them through school, etc., would I be doing what I'm doing today? I don't think I've ever answered the question because I'm kind of afraid of what I might answer if I was going to answer honestly. And he who is without sin shouldn't be casting any stones. So I won't cast the stones at the thousands and thousands and thousands of virologists out there who are going along with this scam. Because you see, they would be out of jobs if they dared criticize Margaret Heckler or the heads of the NIH. They'd be out of jobs, and they'd have families that they have to support, and futures that would be down the drain. You don't cross the establishment. And so the lie is being perpetuated by the silence. Oh. You can tell I don't like doing this, never have. Okay. We want to get a lot of blood. There we go. Okay? There we go. Now I'm wiping this needle thoroughly in this blood. And I say to my friends Fauci and Gottlieb and Galpin and Gallo and all the rest of those criminals, all right, that this is for the sake of humanity and no other reason. Right. And believe me, it hurts. And this is in the hope that it'll save the lives of millions of individuals who will die because of the greatest lie ever told.
Thank you.
Thank you. Get off drugs is right. Get off drugs.
Okay, folks, on behalf of Project AIDS International, I'd like to thank you for coming to this press conference. Dr. WILLNER, MD, PhD, will be giving an explanation in just a moment on what we're doing here and what he will be doing with our volunteer, who is Kim Freyes, who is an HIV positive individual. Today, Dr. WILLNER will be infecting himself. He will first explain what he will be doing, as well as why he will be doing. Directly after his inoculation, Dr. WILLNER will be explaining any questions that you have. There will be a question and answer period. And I would like to take this opportunity to welcome Dr. WILLNER.
I don't know if you can hear me without the mic. Yes. I can hear it. Okay. And because I've done this needle sticking several times already, I'm familiar with some of the things that are put into the press afterwards. And so I want to make a few things very clear before I even start. I have a certificate in sex education, and I taught for a couple of years at the University of Miami Medical School during Sex Education Week to the medical students. I want to make it perfectly clear that I support responsible sex. I call it responsible sex because it goes much further than the concept of safe sex. And I'm not so sure that I know what safe sex is. During this period of time in which especially young people of this country have been threatened with AIDS, a death-dealing disease supposedly, as a consequence of irresponsible sexual behavior, the incidence of venereal disease has climbed, and the incidence of births without benefit of marriage has also climbed.